It took me a long time to start to believe that that really could be happening.
There are people and organizations and companies responsible for this. DuPont and 3M are two of the largest corporations that were responsible for PFAS dumping in the United States. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did they know that these chemicals were potentially toxic? Is that correct?
We believe they did.
And yet, there are members here of this committee that want to defend the quote-unquote economic right for a company to poison its people.
When we look back on Trump, assuming we're still around, his long-term impact will be his blind loyalty to himself, profit over people. That's what sociopaths do. But with all the background noise in an election year, you might have missed what AOC just said. We are poisoning Americans, but not just any Americans, mostly rural, red state Americans who believe this BS about economic rights. Sure, you have the right to open a lemonade stand, but you can't sell cups of poison. And that's what's happening. And loss in the Supreme Court case about Trump's immunity was an even bigger nightmare, which may end up killing you and your family.
The American people. Now, when we talk about economic prosperity, if you're a kid in the South Bronx, if you are a mom in rural Pennsylvania near a PFAS dumping site, who comes ahead when you get cancer and have a medical bill to pay? Who comes out ahead from that PFAS dumping? The CEO of DuPont or that mom?
Now, what AOC referred to as a PFAS, which is short for polyfluoroalkyls, which is a fancy way of saying death.
One of the first PFAS was discovered by accident in 1938 by researchers working for chemical giant DuPont. What made it special was its corrosion resistance, which is why it was used for valves in the first nuclear bomb.
Well, that's encouraging. So what is a PFAS and will they give us cancer? We'll get to that. Last month, you might have heard the Supreme Court overturn the Chevron doctrine, which stripped federal agencies from their ability to protect you from polluters like Chevron or 3M or DuPont, and gave the power to the states because, they're handling abortion so well. The same old Republican BS. But saying a state can pollute the air and river in their state only is like saying it's okay to pee at the other end of the pool. And if Trump is elected later this year, we can count on less environmental protections, fewer food safety requirements, and reduced standards governing the approval of new drugs. Who would benefit from that?
In the early 1960s, the pharmaceutical company behind the drug thalidomide tried to convince Dr. Francis Kelsey, a scientist from the Food and Drugs Administration, to approve their drug.
A stubborn stickler of a medical officer in the Food and Drug Administration, Dr. Francis Kelsey. She refused to approve sale of the drug in the United States.
Thalidomide was eventually blamed for causing birth defects in tens of thousands of children around the world, with many more dying at birth. Thanks to the diligence of Dr. Kelsey and the FDA, children in the US were spared.
The Supreme Court did what Republicans couldn't, kill people for profit. Although, to be fair, Republicans have been trying for years. And you think I'm kidding? As I'm sure you know, government regulations that are good for people are expensive and thus reduce corporate profits. And of course, corporations say, F that. That's why so many corporate leaders support Trump and his soulless cabal. And they're funding his campaign. And with the appointments of Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Coney Barrett, Trump created a supermajority, and now corporations have more rights than you.
So when we talk about the bills and the prosperity that gets made from here and who has to pay that, we need to understand a very simple economic concept called externalities. Externalities. The costs of pollution, the cost of poisoning that are not factored into the profit margin of the corporation that's actually wreaking havoc on this planet.
Now, have you ever heard of PFAS before? Well, you should know. If you live in the Midwest, PFAS is very harmful to people and persists indefinitely in the environment, like forever. Oh, and you'll love this. State and federal agencies set no limits on companies like 3M, which discharges PFAS into the air and water, like the Mississippi, where 3M dumps wastewater directly into the Mississippi River, which you may notice runs from Minnesota to the Gulf of Mexico, affecting more than 100 million Americans. So what is a PFAS? You're not going to like it.
PFAS.
PFAS are one of the most threatening chemicals ever invented.
Now that we're finally becoming aware that these chemicals exist, that we've been exposed without our knowledge for decades and decades.
PFAS pose a serious risk to health and the environment, and worst of all, they never degrade. For this reason, they're also called forever chemicals. And they have an impact on practically all of us. PFAS is an umbrella term for over 4,000 different chemicals. They do a brilliant job of repelling water, grease and dirt, superior to any other substance, which is why nearly every branch of industry uses them. We find them in everything from non-stick cookware, artificial leather, furniture, fire retardants, cleaning liquids, electronics, makeup, cars, pesticides, soils, drinking water and our food. They are literally everywhere.
They're being found in soils all over the planet, in living things all over the planet, in the blood of animals, including polar bears, even in Arctic ice cap, and in the bloods of humans all over the planet, including babies that are being born.
High concentrations can lead to increased liver weight and even cause cancer. PFAS can also affect sperm quality, while the birth weight of newborns can likewise be lowered.
So I know you're asking, how dangerous are they and why don't we know more about them? And what's next?
I've got great news for you, and it's right under this macaroni and cheese. Now, glass ovenware comes with a Teflon finish. So now glass is not the cleanup problem it used to be.
After the Second World War, PFAS found a more everyday use in the kitchen. It became famous in the coating for non-stick pans under the brand name Teflon.
Right?
And it was soon being used everywhere. A success story. Until a farmer in the US noticed that something was wrong with his cattle.
You could see their teeth turning black. You could see them wasting away and dropping dead.
Robert Billard represented the farmer in a 20-year-long legal battle against the multinational.
Was the wildlife in the area, the deer, the fish, the birds, and he thought that he himself and his family was getting sick. And he was convinced he knew what was happening. He could see white foaming water coming out of a landfill next to his property.
It is today probably the biggest legal case in history concerning PFAS contamination, and even inspired the movie Dark Waters.
How many did you lose?
190.
190 cows.
You tell me nothing's wrong here.
And when we talk about issues like climate change, it is at its core an issue of externalities. Because ExxonMobil and all of these oil companies can afford to burn this planet to a crisp because it makes them a pile of money.
Okay, so yeah, AOC is a bulldog. She never backs down, and agree or disagree, no one owns her. So why isn't any of this in the news? Well, it is, but who owns the news and who advertises on the news? Yeah, DuPont, Chevron, 3M. And here's the deal with cancer and causation. It's hard to prove under current standards. And when you remove the feds, let me ask you this. Will Alabama be able to remove a polluting factory that employs 10,000 people? That would be no. The movie about Erin Brockovich was 30 years ago. And while you might remember the happy ending where the woman with cancer got a few $1 million, well, the multi-billion-dollar company, PG&E, wrote that off without an ounce of sweat. And they're right back at it. And that mom who got the money, she's dead of cancer. Trump, a serial sex offender and a convicted felon and a failed businessman with 6 bankruptcies, is supported by most of the Fortune 500, despite his attempt to overturn the election, or maybe because of it. U.S. corporations are anything but patriotic, because if they were, they would back federal regulations that protect people's lives, who, if they die prematurely from cancer, can't buy their cars or their homes and beer and Wonder Bread. But that would require a CEO who cares about something more than the last quarter's P&L sheet, and they don't. This is either a glass of water or hydrochloric acid. One kills your thirst, the other kills you. Who do you trust to tell you the difference, the FDA or this?
Damn right.
Who's with me?
Time to pack it up.
This isn't their Republican Party anymore.
Am I wrong? Damn right.
Tick-tock.
You're in a lot of trouble, Donald.
I think he's crazy.
I'm Chip Franklin.